I know many of you are probably itching to break for lunch, so thank you for being here with me. I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm Vinciane, the Director of Learning and Culture at Verset. We are a leading digital consulting firm. We primarily build web apps, e-commerce platforms, and mobile apps. So we do strategy, UX research, user interface design, growth and analytics, prototyping, development, product definition, org design, a whole bunch of things. So I started my career as a UI designer just about 10 years ago before moving into UX design and strategy. And now I'm in a leadership role at Verset managing our teams. So as the Director of Learning and Culture, I'm essentially a one-woman department, which means that I wear a lot of different hats. I'm in charge of performance management, learning and development, employee engagement, employee recognition, and I lead up our diversity and inclusion initiatives. So the way I like to describe my role is that it's my job to make sure that my team is equipped with the tools and resources to do the highest quality work of their careers and the support and psychological safety to bring their best selves to work every day. So that's what I do at work. That's the visible side of who I am. But what many people don't know is that I'm also someone who lives with depression, anxiety, PTSD. I have obsessive tendencies and a history of eating disorders. That's the side of me that not very many people know about. Due to persisting stigma, talking about these things can feel really awkward. But the way that we break down that stigma is to talk about mental health candidly. So I'm here speaking to you today as someone who works to develop high-performing teams, but also as someone who has lived with mental illness for many, many years. I'm lucky that I work for an organization that cares deeply about its people. So much so that they actually dedicated an entire role to support their employees, which is me. But not everyone is fortunate enough to have that level of buy-in at the top. At Verset, we've learned that investing in our people isn't just the right thing to do, it's also what's most profitable. But before I dive into what mental health support in the workplace looks like and what the return means for companies like yours, I should mention that this is where I'm from. I have a somewhat French-sounding name parce que ma mère est française et mon père est belge, mais je suis née ici au Canada. Work cultures in North America are markedly different than they are here in Europe. Our labor laws do little to protect workers, and you would probably laugh at how few vacation days are actually mandated in Canada and the US. As such, what I'm offering in this talk is a North American perspective on organizational culture in tech and its effects on mental health. So maybe you work for a company that has great work-life balance and offers a lot of support where needed, and if that's the case, then use this as a cautionary tale. If, however, you work for an organization that has adopted a very Silicon Valley style of operating, then I hope you're able to take to heart some of the recommendations I'll be making. Now, we talk a lot about health and wellness in the workplace. We have standing desks, ergonomic chairs, certain organizations have running groups, walking meetings, nutritious snacks at the office. These are all intended to be tools to benefit the physical well-being and productivity of your team members. And these are nice, but what we don't talk about is mental health. Mental illness is unfortunately still highly stigmatized and is an uncomfortable issue we don't address enough in the workplace. The tech industry, in particular, has an unhealthy obsession with productivity and prides itself on erasing the boundaries between work and home life. Browsing through job boards, you'll see a number of companies looking for candidates eager to work a minimum of 60 hours a week. Let's take a look at a few here. So this one is looking for folks who can endure immense work pressure and who essentially won't have a life for the next 5 years. And then the job posting also indicates that if the candidate does well in this role, then the reward will be more responsibility and compensation, but only after enduring immense work pressure and long hours. This one I think is trying to be funny, but in my mind, conflating work ethic with overwork is actually not a joke. And this one is straight up the worst job posting I've ever seen in my life. If this is where we're setting the bar, we truly need to do better. These are memes that I came across recently that I feel perfectly encapsulate what many companies think culture means. And again, it's meant to be funny, but man, does the truth cut like a knife. And this is really pervasive. I feel like hustle culture has turned the standard 9-to-5 workday into what's now called the 9-9-6, which is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Will this allow you to change the world? Yeah, sure, maybe, but you have to ask yourself, at what cost? All right, so why is it that we see such an emphasis placed on heavy workloads and long hours? Well, when it comes to knowledge work, it can be difficult to objectively measure product and output. Looking specifically at development, for example, measuring things like lines of code or bug rates is actually not a reliable measure of quality or productivity or efficiency. So it's really easy to fall into the trap of long hours becoming a proxy for results. However, this comes not only at a human cost, but counterintuitively at a financial cost as well. Let's take a look at the numbers. Mental illness affects nearly 2 in 5 adults in Europe, Switzerland, Iceland, and Norway collectively each year. That's about 211 million people. Of those 211 million people, only 40% sought mental health support in the last year. And in Canada, where I'm from, 500,000 people missed work just this week due to mental health issues. And serious mental illness costs Europe 136 billion euros in lost earnings per year due to absenteeism and reduced productivity. It's no secret that people in our field are overworked. It's no secret that employees feel expected to endure immense work pressure. And it's no secret that in the digital age, we're truly never really out of office. Our lionizing of toxic work habits, like working death march hours and hacking productivity to manage unrealistic workloads, and constantly being connected by text, chat, or email, has created a culture that significantly increases the risk of work burnout and exacerbates existing mental illnesses. Lost my ear.
We're gonna find it again and put it back.
All right, I'll try not to move too much. As a result, people take more sick days, sometimes leading to longer-term disability leave, and vital talent is dropping out of the industry. Often, we're also putting unnecessary strain on an already overburdened healthcare system. Now, I believe we not only have the opportunity, but we have the responsibility to change this. For me, personally, advocating for better mental health support in the workplace is simply the right thing to do. But maybe your company still isn't quite there yet. So here's how I discovered the dollars and cents of it. It's 2012, and I'm working at a major digital agency, working on glossy accounts with big household names that you would all recognize, shiny perks that I brag to my friends about. I have a generous wage, there are catered breakfasts, we have a massage therapist and a hairdresser on staff, access to a fitness facility. By all metrics, I'm working a dream job. But here I am, either trying to covertly stifle panic attacks in the bathroom stalls or sobbing uncontrollably at my desk. I've been coming in early and leaving work late, working on pitches over the weekends, putting in more effort, yet feeling less passion. I actually was jealous of my coworkers who had children because I felt like they at least had a legitimate excuse to leave work on time. I was running full steam ahead, straight towards burnout. And as someone who lives with depression and anxiety, I hit a wall, and man, did I hit it hard. That was a true wake-up call for me, and a really tough way to learn that sometimes I need to ask for help when I'm not okay. The thing is, I did not have the support that I needed at work. I did not feel safe to speak up about what I was going through, and I realized that the environment that I was in was very toxic. I went on disability leave for 6 months before ultimately making the decision to leave that company. And during those 6 months, I received phone calls from HR and from my manager asking how soon I'd be coming back to work, asking how I was doing, how much progress I was making, but at no point did anyone ask, what can we do to help you? How can we help your transition back into the workplace better? What can we do to prevent this from ever happening again? No one asked me that. And so at that point, I really knew that I didn't have much to go back to work for. This was a deeply personal struggle that I was afraid to share for a very long time. I felt a lot of shame that I, a defiantly independent person and an ultra high achiever, couldn't keep my shit together at work. I felt like I couldn't hack it. It took a lot of therapy and introspection and self-compassion to realize that this was not just my problem, it was that company's problem too. And the bottom line is that their awful work culture ended up costing them their bottom line. So, we know that there is a mental health crisis in the tech industry. We know that people aren't seeking help or don't feel like they have the support to do so. And we know that it's costing billions of dollars and euros in lost revenue every year. How do we change this? So the easy option might be to throw more sick days at your employees. Call them mental health days. Those are great, and we do need them, but that's not enough. Open vacation policies are a great alternative to this. So a take-as-needed approach to vacation allows your team the flexibility to either take an afternoon off for medical appointments or up to 3 uninterrupted weeks to spend time with family. Now, without a defined vacation policy, won't employees abuse this privilege? Take weeks off at a time whenever they please? Well, the truth is that statistically, people actually take less time off when the company has an open vacation policy. Perhaps it's guilt or discomfort that keeps them from taking time off, so I feel like it's really important to set a minimum number of days that employees must take off every year. My company, for example, sets a minimum number of vacation days on top of time off. We close between Christmas and the New Year, and anything above that is up to the individual. And it's actually part of my monthly reporting to keep tabs on everyone's vacation days, and if I notice that someone hasn't taken time off in a while, I'll give them a friendly nudge. Flexible work arrangements. Allowing the flexibility to work remotely has huge benefits for individuals living with mental illness. With the ability to do Skype, Zoom, call in for meetings, and the constant connectivity enabled by Slack, there are fewer and fewer reasons for people to actually be in office. And I know personally that that kind of flexibility has allowed me to continue working even when leaving the house feels a little bit too hard. Honoring a 40-hour work week. We don't work in a unionized industry, but there's a reason unions draw a hard line at 40 hours. Switzerland and European countries tend to have much stricter labor laws around working hours, and this is for a very good reason. Research strongly supports that mental health, work satisfaction, and even productivity suffers beyond those 40 hours. In 2012, Finnish researcher Mariana Virtanen built on a 40-year study of public servants to examine the long-term impact of working long hours. And what she found was truly startling. Working 11 or more hours a day had at least doubled the risk of depression. Those working 55 hours a week began in midlife to suffer cognitive loss. Their performance was poorer when tested for vocabulary, reasoning, information processing, problem solving, creativity, and reaction times. This kind of mild cognitive impairment also predicted earlier dementia and death. Now, this is pretty harrowing, especially when we see those job postings asking for commitments of 60+ hours per week. And this is particularly sick when people view working long hours as a badge of honor, as they typically do in North America, and especially in tech. Boundaries. Respecting the 40-hour work week also means respecting the boundaries between work and personal life. Phone calls, emails, Slack messages late at night and on weekends might not cut much time into your employees' days, but they do cut into the mental and emotional energy reserved for other areas of their lives. Friends, parents, spouses, children, time and energy for them. In a 2016 Gallup report on the state of the workplace, greater work-life balance and better personal well-being was the number 2 most important factor when considering whether to take a job with a new organization. 53% of respondents said that this was very important to them. And female employees were more likely than male employees to assign high importance to this job attribute, making this a particularly important recruitment and retention tool for women in tech. Open plan office layouts. Now, this is a contentious one. People love or hate open plan workspaces. And there's evidence to support that it benefits creativity and collaboration, but there's also evidence that it increases anxiety, particularly for women. A recent study from UK researchers revealed that women were more likely to feel being watched and judged on their appearances in open plan office spaces, and reported experiencing greater sexual harassment. Yes, these open plan layouts can be great for collaboration and perhaps flattening the perception of hierarchy in organizations, but it does come at a cost. Education and empathy. Let's talk about what mental health is and isn't. Mental health is not the absence of mental illness. You can have terrible mental health and still not have a diagnosable condition. And the flip side to that is that you can live with mental illness and still have great mental health. And I consider myself to be someone who falls into that category. In terms of empathy, you won't know how to support your employees or your peers if you don't know what they're struggling with. And if this isn't your area of expertise, hire a facilitator to come in and speak to your team. Sunday night, I had the opportunity to speak with Paolo, whom you heard from yesterday, and he mentioned that a Swiss company that he worked at actually offered training to managers to help identify signs of burnout, and that the organization had a whole protocol for dealing with mental health at work. I was really heartened to hear this, but at the same time, this should be the standard, not the exception to the rule. And when I talk about empathy, developing empathy means truly understanding when your employees and peers voice concerns. This helps you understand what each individual experiences, and you can then apply those insights to shape an environment that helps everyone thrive. Finally, lead by example. Your organization may be checking all of these boxes, but if your CEO or your director or your manager is sending out emails at midnight, what kind of message is this sending? As a director at my company, I make a point of snoozing all work notifications on evenings and weekends. Remember, we build digital products. Nobody's lives are at stake, and work can wait. Now, if you yourself are struggling with mental health at work, there are things that you can do too. Set boundaries. This means saying no, and I know that this is easier said than done. But if you're not in a position to actually step away from work temporarily, you can step away from more senior level work. This means delegating tasks, lightening your workload, and shutting it down after an 8-hour day. Practice self-care. It is so important, and this truly cannot be overemphasized. Now, self-care looks different for everyone, but for me, it means taking my dogs for a walk, sometimes doing baking at home. Other times it's going for coffee with friends or maybe sweating it out at the gym. And for my own mental well-being, self-care also means therapy. Ask for help. I mean this within the context of the workplace, but also seek professional help for mental health services. See a counselor, therapist, or psychologist. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of strength that you're willing to do the work to get better. A wise therapist once told me, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So that being said, too often we actually place onus on the individuals who are struggling with mental illness to reach out and ask for help. It can be incredibly daunting to share that you're actually not okay. So if you know someone at work who has a history of mental illness, be the one to reach out first. Ask them how they are, ask if they need support, and ask how you can help. As a manager, one of the easiest ways that you can open up the conversation around mental health is just asking your reports, how are your stress levels? It's that simple. Which brings me to the last point. If you're not in a management or leadership position where you feel like you can affect change, you can still take the first step in starting the conversation around mental health in the workplace. One of the most powerful tools you have as an individual contributor is ironically the power of the collective. When you band together behind a cause that you believe in, change happens. Don't be afraid to get loud about the things that you need. I've learned that you have to get comfortable being the squeaky wheel. Qui ne demande rien n'a rien. All right, so we talked about the investment, and I promised there would be a return on this. So, what do we see when companies offer these kinds of initiatives and invest in their people? In a 2016 study conducted by the Canadian Mental Health Association, organizations that took steps to address workplace mental health saw improved attitudes towards mental health, decreased stigma, improved employee engagement, increases in productivity, sense of overall well-being, higher levels of trust in the workplace, greater satisfaction with leadership, improved interpersonal relationships, a greater sense of commitment and loyalty to the company, decreases in errors efficiencies, less absenteeism, less turnover, and that big one, decrease in lost revenue due to missed work. In other words, happier, more productive teams, and happier, more profitable companies. Now, this may sound too idealistic, but in leadership expert Simon Sinek's words, I can't be an idealist if these organizations exist in reality. I work at one of those organizations. I know firsthand that comprehensive health support, mental health support, and profitable organizations are not mutually exclusive. In fact, the former leads to the latter. So these are excellent practices, not only for employee retention and productivity, but also for employee attraction. People want to work where they feel valued, supported, and understood. It's a very competitive job market, and millennials in particular, who make up the majority of the workforce in tech, at least in North America, are more likely to work for companies where work-life balance is a stated priority. But it's more than just a question of changing the policies at your company. It's about changing the culture. It's time to stop dangling the carrot of career advancement and rewarding toxic work habits at the expense of mental health. Let's start reinvesting in our people. Because really, can you afford not to? Thank you. So actually, before we head into Q&A, I'd like each of you to take a few minutes, and you're going to hate me for this, but you're going to grab 2 or 3 people sitting next to you and come up with ways that you will commit to improving mental health in your workplace. And then I'll call on you to see what you brainstormed. Oui.
Yeah?
Ouais, je suis un peu
Better in
rouillée.
English? Okay. You have 5 minutes for me after?
Ah oui, oui, oui,
Maybe here?
absolument. Mhm,
Super,
ouais.
merci.
Has everyone had enough time to come up with brilliant initiatives?
Yeah, these microphones are a bit hard to position and to
I
make
think
sure
it's
that.
probably my hair too.
Okay, so let's do that again.
Okay.
Is it okay? It doesn't hurt?
Mm-hmm. No, ça va.
Okay, and now let's put it a little like
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay, who wants to volunteer what they came up with? If I don't see hands, I will call. Oh, we've got Robert.
Can you pass it to Roman, please?
That was a great presentation. Thank you. I think there's a history of managers who think that part of their job is to make sure that their employees keep busy. And it's a proven fact that keeping busy, and especially when the manager comes and starts interfering with their work and saying, "What are you doing? Why aren't you busy?" and start telling them what to do, that's the surest way of slowing down work and creating pressure and creating this unhealthy atmosphere for people to do work. I'm sure everybody in this room, a computer expert, you know that a computer whose processor has a load of 100% will take forever to do anything, and people are the same.
Absolutely.
So they need to have slack time. They need to have the time to recuperate, restore the glucose levels in their brain so they can think. And I think anybody who has a managerial role has got to commit to not interfere with those processes.
I 100% agree. Thank you. Anyone else have recommendations or suggestions of how they want to adopt better mental health practices in the workplace? We have one over here. Matteo.
I think one of the roles of the manager is to make sure that your employees don't get over involved in what they're doing. At one point, you have to let go, and I think this is too important for me, and there's no improvement in being so involved in a problem.
Absolutely. I think that as a manager, you have to question what is your value in this interaction. What are you bringing to your team, and what are you bringing to the project? And back to Robert's point, if you're slowing people down, then how effective is that? Anyone else?
You can also ask your questions
Yes.
in French. Vous pouvez poser la question en français. Vinciane, elle comprend super bien le français, elle parle
Je vais faire de
aussi.
mon mieux de répondre en français,
Donc,
mais je peux rien promettre.
Voilà, si ça facilite la question. Est-ce qu'il y a des managers ici qui vont s'engager à quelque chose et qui veulent le partager? Non? D'autres
Questions?
retours d'expérience?
Oh,
Ah.
I would say suggest for the manager to make very clear about the goal, in which direction we go, so people they don't ask themselves what are we supposed to do, and being depressed because they don't know what's the goal of everything they do.
yes, being clear about goals is very important. Are there any questions? Yes?
in my previous company, I have just living it just before the burnout, and I can suggest to everybody to take some times to reevaluate her value, because if you not be agree with the value of the company, in my previous use, I like to work with my colleague. I like my works. It was very exciting in international companies. And after that, I realized that I'm not compatible with the value of this company. Because, as you have said, I make very important, I have 2 children, I will spend time with them. And now I have taken a new way and decided to reduce my salary. And I work in a company that provide, for example, annual work time, and you can manage it as you want. We have a really true free time to work on the day, and it's really a gain for the company to have employees that is very happy and know that it's possible to manage the time and activity. It's the same. I have followed a meeting in a few years about innovation into the company. We work on all in IT, and the innovation is the goal that we need to have. And some manager give you 25% of your time for innovation. And it's not true. It's not a good way, because innovation coming only when all planet is aligned and you have free on your mind, and the manager need to give time when the innovation come and not when he wants.
Right. And I think you bring up a really good point about values and working for an organization whose values align with your own, and really reflecting on your own values. And like you said, for you, you're willing to take less salary in order to have more time with your family. In the long run, I mean, what matters more? Yes.
It's not really a question. I'm not a manager, more on a team member. But sometimes just asking your colleagues how they're doing.
Yes.
But not just to make some chit chat, but really caring can make a lot of difference in the team spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of employee engagement, one of the kind of benchmark questions that a lot of organizations measure employee engagement with is, I have someone who cares about me at work, or I have a best friend at work. And it might sound silly, like I don't need to be friends with my coworkers. I have friends. Co-work is something separate. But truly, when we see organizations where the response rate for that is very positive, in the 70% plus range, we do see a higher correlation of employee engagement and employee satisfaction when folks do have close relationships. And like you said, not just on a superficial level, but when you have people who actually deeply care about you and your well-being. Yes.
Thank you, Vinciane. And I don't have a question either, but what I would say is we're all responsible for calling out this behavior. And in my company, previously, where I would see people sharing with leadership, this team is working 16 to 18-hour days for the past 8 weeks to try to get this project out, and then leadership said, great job, this is amazing, I'm so proud of you, to then have the responsibility to say in the meeting or afterwards, is this the behavior that we really want to reward? What behavior do we want to reward instead? And have people have this safety to speak up in this occasion so that we can collectively change the behavior. To your point, we all have some collective responsibility to speak up when we see something that's not healthy behavior. So that's what I would say. Everyone can have a say in this.
Right, and culture fundamentally is the actions that you reward and punish. That's what culture is. So in situations like those where you're rewarding that culture of overwork, that just becomes a feedback loop where people learn, if you want to get ahead, if you want to be promoted, if you want greater opportunities, you're gonna have to work 16 hours a day. Whereas the way I look at it, if you can't get your work done in an 8-hour day, then there's a problem with resourcing and allocation, and that probably going over budget. Your burn down rates are probably insane. So that to me flags a greater question, and again relates back to that level of profitability. If your team can't get the scoped amount of work done in an 8-hour day, you've got other issues. Anything else? Yes.
Maybe we could also consider the problem of society now. We have a climate crisis, things like this, which may have an impact also if we see our company, which didn't do nothing for a big problem like this, and could be also. I know that, for example, young people who leave university and enter the work, and they search for company having value, like doing something good for in that topic, for climate, for.
Yeah, and I think that again, as I previously mentioned, especially young people want to work somewhere where the organization's values align with theirs. And I think what even we're seeing more and more with, I mean, I'm in my early 30s, but even younger folks who are just coming out of university, it's becoming more of an interviewing process when we're looking for new candidates. It's as though the candidates are interviewing us. And so they're asking us, what is your commitment to XYZ? A big one for us is diversity and inclusion. What is your commitment to hiring a diverse team, and what kind of policies and procedures do you have in place to create a safe and inclusive environment for everyone? And I think you raise a really great point with the issue of climate change. You know, what is the organization's commitment to carbon offset or that kind of thing? And people really want to work somewhere where they feel connected to that. If there aren't any more questions, I actually do have a bunch of resources available. So general editorials that kind of cover the topics of mental health in the workplace, especially around burnout. I also have personal and workplace tools, so things that you can do as an individual in your workplace to not only manage mental health, but also become an advocate for better mental health in your workplace. So you can follow me on Twitter or email me. If you need my email, I've got business cards, and I'm happy to connect with anyone. I feel like I'm really fortunate to work in a work environment where mental health is definitely very supported, and I just want to spread that for everyone. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Vinciane. And here's your little thank you gift with your name, Vinciane, is on.
Nothing ever has my name on it.
And we managed, yeah. So thank you very much, Vinciane.